Hello, souls who love exploration. Today, we will embark on a special journey together where science meets sleep and the mysteries of life are revealed in a slow, gentle way like a lullaby. If you are looking for a space to both relax and expand your imagination with strange creatures beyond the familiar framework, then you have come to the right place. Remember to subscribe and stay until the end of the video, because what you are about to discover may change the way you look at life strange, profound, and full of enchantment. Life is strange, explained slowly. When we gently close our eyes, relaxing in the silent darkness of the night, imagine a hidden world where life not only exists but thrives under conditions once thought impossible by humans. In that place, nature seems to have become an endless creator, experimenting with all kinds of shapes and strategies to sustain life. And our journey begins with one of the most beloved and famous creatures in the realm of resilient survivors, uh, the tardigrade, the tiny water bear. If there were a contest in endurance, the tardigrade would surely rank among the top. They are so small that you need a microscope to see them, yet they possess abilities that even comic book superheroes would envy. Tardigrades can withstand being boiled in hot water, frozen like ice, thrown into the vacuum of space, or even desiccated for years and still come back to life. The secret lies in their ability to enter a cryptobiotic state, a form of extreme hibernation. When the surrounding conditions become harsh, they curl up, dehydrate almost completely, and nearly shut down all biological activity. In this state, they are like living dust particles, waiting for years, even decades, until the first drop of water awakens them again. What makes the tardigrade special is not just its survival ability, but also the lesson of resilience it conveys. While we, humans, often collapse under stress, illness, or natural disasters, a creature less than 1 millimeter long teaches us that life can patiently wait, sleep, and then return stronger than ever. When you feel exhausted, remember that somewhere in this universe there are tiny creatures enduring hardships thousands of times harsher. Yet nature does not stop at tardigrades. It also holds countless other organisms with survival strategies so strange they seem unbelievable. Another striking example is the group of thermophiles. Imagine stepping into a hot spring in Yellowstone, where the water bubbles at nearly 100 degrees Celsius, hot enough to boil an egg. And yet, instead of being destroyed, certain bacteria consider this a paradise resort. These microorganisms not only endure high temperatures, but actually require them to survive. Their proteins and cell membranes are so cleverly designed that they are not destroyed at temperatures where most other life would melt away. The story becomes even more fascinating when modern science discovers that these heat loving organisms are in fact silent allies in laboratories. A special enzyme extracted from them, Taq polymerase, is an indispensable component of PCR technology, which allows DNA to be replicated millions of times within just a few hours. Thanks to this, modern medicine can test, study genetics, and detect diseases quickly. It can be said that without the organisms living in these natural boiling pots, molecular biology as we know it might have been delayed by decades. When you think everything is already strange enough, nature reveals another secret: halophiles. Most life forms are dehydrated and die when exposed to high salt concentrations. But in salt lakes, salt flats, or even in salt mines, there are tiny organisms that see salt as a gift. Instead of fighting against salinity, they adapt by turning their bodies into biological salt lovers. They use special proteins to maintain ion balance, preventing water from escaping their cells. Some halophiles even produce red or pink pigments, transforming entire lakes into surreal landscapes. These pigments are not for beauty, but serve as shields protecting them from harsh sunlight and ultraviolet rays. You may have seen images of strange pink lakes online. Most of them are thanks to thriving halophilic communities coloring the world in their own way. But it doesn't stop at salt and heat. Nature also challenges life with extremely acidic environments, where the pH is as low as that of battery acid. There, tiny organisms still cling on, turning acid into their familiar home. Their cell structures are reinforced to resist corrosion, as if clad in an impenetrable chemical armor. On the opposite extreme, alkalophiles thrive in conditions with a pH as high as soap or cleaning solutions. Most proteins would be destroyed in such conditions, yet these organisms function normally, even happily. The big question is, Why can life adapt to such extremes? The answer is not simple. Perhaps it is because life is not as fragile as we once thought. From the time Earth was still a young, fiery planet filled with lava and lacking oxygen, pioneering organisms learned how to cope. And their descendants, the extremophiles we see today, continue to prove that life does not just exist, but flourishes in places that seem hopeless. This carries profound meaning. If life can endure acid, salt, ice, or even the vacuum of space, then why couldn't it exist on Mars, or beneath the ice of Europa, Jupiter's moon? Studying these organisms not only helps us understand Earth, but also expands our imagination of the universe and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And while those microorganisms quietly build their own tale of resilience, larger creatures, such as the hairy frog of Africa, write stories so bizarre and dramatic they are almost unbelievable. But that will be the next part of our journey. Life is strange, explained slowly. When we observe nature, it's easy to feel that everything follows a logical order. Fish swim, birds fly, trees photosynthesize, and humans think. But the truth is, if you look more closely, nature does not operate according to any perfect plan. It is the result of millions, even billions of years of trial, error, and harsh selection. It is this very harshness that has created creatures so strange they seem as if they belong only in science fiction. And sometimes that strangeness is the clearest proof of evolution's extraordinary power of survival. Let's begin with familiar lands, where the sky still carries light and the green forest still echoes with birdsong. In the tropical rainforests of Africa, there exists a small amphibian whose very existence makes scientists both curious and amazed. The hairy frog. From its name alone, there is already a paradox. A frog, which should be smooth skinned to swim easily, grows soft hairs along the sides of its body. But these are not real hairs. They are skin structures with blood vessels, helping the male absorb extra oxygen when it must stay underwater for long periods during the breeding season, as if evolution had given it a natural oxygen tank. However, the strangeness of the hairy frog does not stop there. When threatened, it can break its own bones, pushing the sharp fragments through its skin to turn them into defensive weapons. A chilling mechanism, but an extremely effective one. You can imagine, instead of screaming or fleeing, this tiny creature turns its skeleton into living daggers. Of course, the body heals itself afterward, but the image of a frog drawing swords from within its own flesh has become an extreme example of the frightening creativity of evolution. It is clear proof that sometimes life must pay the price of pain in order to survive. If the deep forest contains such surprises, then the ocean, especially the deep sea, is the world of even more extreme paradoxes. The deep sea is often compared to Earth's final frontier. No sunlight, water pressure as heavy as hundreds of trucks, and temperatures near freezing. It is an environment where human intuition would think nothing could possibly live. But in reality, it teems with life. And life here does not merely exist. It thrives, transforming into the strangest forms and strategies. One of the most famous residents of the darkness is the anglerfish. You have probably seen illustrations of it. A female with sharp teeth, a mouth so wide it can swallow prey half its own size, and most notably a glowing lantern dangling from its forehead. That eerie blue-green light is not for beauty, but a deadly trap. In eternal darkness, any light is an irresistible invitation. Prey swim closer, mesmerized by the glow, and the instant they enter the kill zone, the enormous mouth snaps shut like an iron trap. What makes this fish even stranger is its reproductive strategy. In many species, the male is so tiny it is only a tenth the size of the female. As an adult, its sole mission is to find a female. Once it does, it bites into her body and fuses permanently. Their flesh dissolves together, blood vessels connect, and gradually the entire male is absorbed, leaving behind only reproductive organs. It becomes part of the female's body, ensuring that whenever she needs, sperm is ready. A kind of eternal love that may make humans shiver, but in the harsh darkness, it is the perfect survival strategy, ensuring reproduction without wasting energy searching for mates again. If the anglerfish represents the horror of the deep sea, then the gulper eel is an example of bizarre humor. With its enormous head and mouth making up nearly a third of its body length, it looks more like a caricature than a real creature. Its mouth can expand wide enough to swallow prey larger than itself. In an environment where food is scarce, the ability to eat big in one go is an absolute advantage. It does not need to chase swiftly, it only needs to open wide and wait for opportunity. You could say it is yet another example that in evolution, sometimes exaggeration to the point of absurdity is the key to survival. And when speaking of the absurd, one cannot overlook the blobfish, a creature once labeled the ugliest in the world. But that title is truly unfair. In fact, in its natural habitat at depths of around 800 to 1,000 meters, the blobfish looks completely normal. Only when dragged to the surface does the sudden drop in pressure deform its soft, gelatinous body into a sagging blob like melted wax. This is proof that sometimes strangeness lies not in the creature itself, but in how we observe it out of context. For the blobfish, ugliness is actually a symbol of perfect adaptation. Its body being lighter than water allows it to float effortlessly without expending energy swimming, and its passive lifestyle, drifting along and eating anything that touches it, is a highly effective strategy in such a harsh environment. Looking more broadly, the deep sea is where all familiar rules are bent. Without sunlight, many species still thrive through symbiosis with chemosynthetic bacteria. Without eyes, many rely entirely on pressure and vibrations to navigate. Some are red to disappear in the darkness, while others glow to hide their shadow from predators. Every detail, no matter how strange, is a perfect piece of the survival puzzle. And that is the crucial message. Life is not always beautiful or logical. Sometimes it is distorted, frightening, or ridiculous. But all of it has a reason, and all of it leads to one single outcome: survival. There is a truth that the deeper we go into the ocean, the more we realize the concept of life is never as simple as what textbooks describe. Life under the sea is not just about breathing, eating, and reproducing, but also about bizarre survival strategies, transformations beyond imagination, and the silent messages that nature conveys to us. Deep sea creatures, whether humble or grotesque in appearance, resemble characters stepping out of a science fiction novel. Yet they are completely real and exist right beneath the gentle waves offshore. Take, for example, the glass sponge, the silent architects of the ocean. If on land, humans take pride in skyscrapers, then on the deep sea floor, sponges have been building dazzling crystal towers for millennia. They have no eyes, no brain, not even a nervous system. But that very simplicity is the foundation of an almost unbelievable form of resilience. When a sponge filters water, it not only gathers nutrients for itself, but also cleans an entire surrounding area, circulating nutrients for countless other organisms. They are like biological filtration stations, quietly maintaining balance for the ocean. And then, in that centuries long silence, they slowly grow, becoming witnesses to a history humanity can hardly imagine. Perhaps if sponges could tell stories, they would recount ice ages, climate shifts, or even the moments when human civilization had not yet appeared. In contrast to the fragility of sponges is the defense strategy of sea cucumbers. So bold it seems, unbelievable. This creature looks gentle, limp, like a sausage lying quietly on the sand. Yet, when danger comes, it unleashes a smokescreen no predator expects. It ejects its entire internal organs. At first glance, it seems like suicide, but in reality, this is its most powerful weapon. While the predator is distracted by the sudden burst of guts exploding like a biological firework, the sea cucumber has already slipped away. And the greater miracle lies in this. Within a few weeks, all the discarded organs grow back as new. They not only survive, but regenerate themselves. Humans may spend decades researching regenerative medicine, while sea cucumbers have been doing it successfully for millions of years of evolution. A body that appears fragile, yet carries the secret of extraordinary recovery. And then, among the warm layers of water, appears a master of disguise, the mimic octopus. If the sponge is an architect and the sea cucumber a strategist, then the mimic octopus is the stage actor of the ocean. Unsatisfied with merely changing skin color like its relatives, this octopus goes further. It impersonates other creatures to escape. When necessary, it becomes a sea snake with slender body and menacing stripes. At other times, it transforms into a lionfish, spreading venomous spines in defiance. And sometimes it slithers like a flatfish, leaving predators confused, unable to distinguish real from fake. What is remarkable is that the mimic octopus does not perform according to a fixed script. It chooses its role depending on the predator threatening it. Before damselfish, which usually attack sea snakes, it will not pretend to be one. In front of other species, it changes roles instantly. This flexibility raises a big question. Perhaps in that vast world, sparks of intelligence already exist far beyond what humans imagine. All of these creatures, from the silent sponge, the self eviscerating sea cucumber, to the shape shifting octopus, share one thing in common. They challenge our concept of the norms of life. They are not agile, not mighty, nor do they need to show off. And yet, through their differences, they become indispensable pieces of the ecosystem. Sponges preserve the flow of nutrients. Sea cucumbers clean and recycle sand. The mimic octopus maintains balance through instinctive performances. No creature is useless. All are evidence of nature's boundless creativity. In the rush of life, when we often glorify speed, strength, and competition, the ocean quietly delivers a different message. Life does not need to be loud to be great. There is power in silence, secrets hidden in fragility, and beauty that reveals itself only when we dare to patiently observe. It is this very diversity and strangeness that has allowed this planet to keep moving forward for billions of years. If the mimic octopus teaches us about the hidden intelligence in its tentacles, while the leafy sea dragon and the mudskipper reveal the art of camouflage and the spirit of daring to cross the boundary between two worlds, then the strangeness of nature does not stop there. When our gaze shifts from moving creatures to a kingdom that seems motionless, the plant world, a new horizon of deception and survival strategies emerges. The peaceful green leaves we usually admire on the ground, in fact, conceal countless freeloaders, trickster artists who have turned their entire bodies into tools to seize the lives of others. Plants are often described as gentle. They do not flee, do not stalk, nor fight fiercely like animals. But beneath that calm exterior lies an arsenal. Some species have evolved to suck the life sap from others, like vampires in green robes. Mistletoe, for instance, not only clings tightly to the branches of its host tree, but also drives parasitic roots into the xylem and phloem, where the nutrient flow operates. Instead of fully photosynthesizing, it exploits the organic matter produced by the host, living off another's sacrifice. That image challenges our entire notion of plants as self sufficient beings. Clearly, in the game of survival, not every species chooses the path of self reliance. Going further, there are parasites that not only drain nutrients, but also manipulate the host's behavior. One of the strangest examples is the dodder vine. From the moment it sprouts, dodder does not seek to grow green leaves reaching for the light like other plants. Instead, it searches for the chemical scents emitted by nearby plants, the smell of sap, of energy it can exploit. When it catches the right signal, it extends thread-like stems, like wrapping tightly around another plant and beginning the takeover. The stronger the host, the tighter the dodder clings and drains. If you look closely, you will see an entire network of orange-yellow vines like tangled electric wires, turning the host plant into a free biological charging station. Here, deception is not just a game, it is the only way of life. What is frightening is that dodder does not just drain, but also controls. Recent studies show it can interfere with the host's chemical signaling. Parasitized plants usually send out distress signals, releasing compounds to summon insects or block intrusion. But when dodder takes control, those signals are blocked or distorted. The host gradually loses its ability to resist, like someone under hypnosis, outwardly green and thriving, but inwardly turned into a biological slave. At this level, we are no longer talking about material parasitism, but parasitism of the plant's very chemical nervous system. This forces us to reconsider. Are plants really the passive beings we imagine them to be? Perhaps they quietly wage hidden wars, not with fangs and claws, but with scents, electrical impulses, and chemical signals. In tropical rainforests where thousands of species crowd together, trees do not just compete for light and water, but also clash with invisible strategies. Some release toxins that drip into the soil, preventing other seeds from germinating. Some disguise themselves as flowers to lure pollinators, while others trick animals by promising nectar but never delivering. Their weapons are sophistication, and their battlefield is the invisible space of fragrance and signals. The green vampires, like dodder, are only the tip of the iceberg. Expanding our view, we see a host of other bizarre parasitic plants, such as Rafflesia, the giant flower that grows directly from its host's tissue without leaves or stems, displaying only an enormous bloom reeking of rotting flesh to lure flies. This is deception at the level of sight and smell, a perfect play that makes flies believe they've found food or a breeding ground, while in reality, they are merely pollinating this plant trickster. In a forest where every creature must fight for survival, Rafflesia does not bother to photosynthesize. It borrows strength from its host and channels all its energy into attracting, deceiving, and reproducing. When we compare these phenomena with the animal world, we see an intriguing parallel. If the mimic octopus performs to survive, the sea dragon blends in to avoid predators, or the mudskipper crosses the boundary of water, then parasitic plants choose the path of living on another's breath. Without moving, without muscles, they still become master strategists. Evolution does not seem to prioritize morality, only efficiency. If parasitism helps a species endure for millions of years, then it is a valid strategy, and sometimes even more sophisticated than any predatory tactic. It is hard not to feel a shiver when looking at the orange-yellow vines coiling around a healthy tree, or when seeing a giant Rafflesia bloom erupting from a trunk, displaying both beauty and horror. Yet at the same time, we cannot help but marvel at nature's creativity. In the harsh game called survival, even plants that seem gentle can transform into relentless usurpers. This strangeness once again reminds us that life is strange, explained slowly. And only when we are willing to slow down and look closely do we discover the diversity, the surprises, and even the brutality hidden behind every single leaf. When it comes to life, most of us often imagine green trees, wild grass, dense forests, or peaceful landscapes bathed in sunlight. Plants in the human mind are often associated with gentleness, immobility, and even a certain passivity. But the deeper we dig, the more we realize that behind that quiet green facade lies a universe full of tricks, schemes, and survival strategies that even the animal world must respect. Today's main section will open the first door into that world, where plants not only live but also hunt, disguise, exchange signals, and even manipulate other organisms. One of the strangest examples is a parasitic plant called Cuscuta, commonly known by the folk names dodder or daughter plant. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a tangle of thin orange-yellow threads wrapped tightly around the stems of other plants, like a forgotten bowl of spaghetti. But behind that harmless appearance is a true predator. Unlike most other plants, Cuscuta has no chlorophyll, meaning it cannot photosynthesize at all. Instead, it develops special structures called haustoria, like delicate needles that pierce directly into the host's tissues to suck out water and nutrients. What makes this plant so formidable is the way it turns the host into part of its own body. It doesn't just feed off it, it plugs directly into the vascular system of the other plant, hijacking the entire nutrient highway to sustain itself. But the life of Cuscuta is far from simple. When its seeds germinate, instead of putting down roots, they begin a desperate search. The young stem stretches out, twisting in the air as if probing for direction. The secret lies in a special ability. It can sense chemical signals, volatile compounds released by surrounding plants. Like a hunting dog following a scent, Cuscuta sniffs out the right host. If within a few short days it finds a target, its survival is secured. If not, it withers and dies, ending its life cycle quietly. It is a ruthless gamble, succeed or disappear forever. And it is precisely this level of risk that makes its survival strategy so remarkable. What's fascinating is that once it latches onto a host, Cuscuta doesn't just drain nutrients. Many studies have shown that it can also transmit signals and genetic material back and forth between itself and its host, even becoming a bridge for communication between multiple plants. In other words, it is not only a thief, but also a living telecommunications system. Some scientists call this a plant social network, where chemical messages, genetic adjustments, and even defense responses can spread from one plant to another. Of course, the service provider here, Cuscuta, is not a neutral party. It manipulates these flows to serve its own interests, sometimes turning the host into a green zombie, alive but controlled from within. Cuscuta is only the beginning of the strange world of parasitic plants. Hidden beneath the soil are species like broomrape, another parasite that doesn't bother to grow leaves or stems at all. It lives entirely on the roots of its host, draining them of nutrients, and only emerges above ground when it needs to reproduce, displaying small flowers like little flags, signaling that an invasion has been completed. Higher up, there is the familiar mistletoe, a symbol of holiday cheer and romance. But don't be fooled by its glossy green leaves. Mistletoe is a semi-parasite capable of limited photosynthesis while secretly siphoning sap from tree branches. Over time, mistletoe's invasion can weaken and slowly kill even ancient trees. The world of parasitic plants becomes even more intriguing when we realize they are anything but passive. They have no brains, no nerves, yet they can sense, react, and adapt with astonishingly sophisticated strategies. Some species go further, mastering the arts of camouflage and deception. In Africa, Hydnora africana grows entirely underground, exposing only its bizarre flowers that mimic the color and shape of host roots. When blooming, it releases a foul stench of decaying flesh, tricking flies and beetles into entering for pollination. The unlucky ones become temporarily trapped inside the flower, dusted with pollen, before being released. A masterful con, blending morphological mimicry with scent manipulation. Other species choose subtler methods, imitating the color and shape of host leaves to avoid detection by humans or animals that might uproot or destroy them. For plants, hiding in plain sight can be the most effective defense, since they cannot run or fight back. Thus, a grand game unfolds in silence. Parasite and host continually adapt, strategize, and outwit one another, much like a hidden biological battlefield in seemingly tranquil gardens. Even more surprising is that instead of only causing harm, parasitic plants play an important role in ecological balance. By suppressing the growth of overly dominant species, they create opportunities for biodiversity to flourish. Many birds and insects also find shelter in their tangled networks of vines. In indigenous cultures, numerous species hold spiritual or medicinal value, used in rituals or traditional medicine. And for modern science, they represent a gold mine of research, from host detection to mechanisms of gene and signal transfer, all offering potential applications in agriculture, biotechnology, and medicine. The world of plants, therefore, is far from simple as we once thought. Beneath their gentle appearance lie calculated strategies, creative survival tactics, and sometimes cruelty so chilling it makes us shudder. They do not roar, they bear no fangs, yet they wield chemical and biological tools so powerful that nature itself bows to them. And in that, we realize that life does not need to be loud to be great. When we think of intelligence, we often picture a brain, a soft, wrinkled organ, dense with neurons and electrical impulses constantly firing. Yet nature never confines itself to the familiar definitions of humans. Intelligence sometimes does not need brain folds at all, but can flow through a body without bones, without eyes, and even without nerves. That is the case of the strange organisms called slime molds, entities that have been forcing us to redefine the concepts of thinking and problem solving. Slime molds are neither plants, nor fungi, nor animals. They are a special kind of organism, often placed in the gray zone of biological classification, a box reserved for species that fit nowhere neatly. Seen from afar, they may look like a yellow smear spread across rotting wood, or like a slimy web creeping over damp soil. But don't let that bizarre appearance fool you. Inside those seemingly lifeless patches of slime lies a living mechanism full of creativity, almost like a distributed intelligence, capable of learning, remembering, and making decisions without any kind of control center. The most famous experiment on the strange abilities of slime molds began in a simple way. Scientists placed oat flakes, their favorite food, at various points in a maze. One might expect the organism to just spread randomly, but over time, the slime mold gradually withdrew from dead ends and reinforced the paths leading to the food. In the end, it created an optimal route, the quickest and most energy efficient, to connect the oat flakes. The wonder here is that there was no brain giving orders, no map in its head, no pre-programmed strategy. All the decisions emerged purely from chemical reactions and the flow of matter within that slimy body. To picture this more clearly, you can imagine slime molds as a collective of microscopic units, each small part sensing its surroundings and responding. When millions of these local signals interact, A complex behavioral pattern emerges, much like the way thousands of starlings can form a flock flying in perfect harmony without a single leader. This is collective intelligence, or more precisely, intelligence without a center. The subtlety of slime molds also shows in their ability to learn. In other experiments, when encountering toxins or unfavorable conditions, they can change their behavior. And even more surprisingly, when two slime molds merge, they can transmit their experiences to one another. The information is not stored in any neural memory, but in biochemical changes shared through their slime, a kind of primitive memory, yet astonishingly effective. Thanks to this ability, slime molds have attracted attention not only from biologists, but also from mathematicians and engineers. Researchers once tested slime molds on a map of Tokyo, placing oat flakes to represent satellite cities around it. The result amazed the world. The network created by the slime mold was nearly identical to the actual railway system, optimized in length, efficient in connectivity. A brainless organism had designed a complex infrastructure system, something that humans needed countless engineers and blueprints to accomplish. This raises a big question. Is intelligence truly only the product of a brain, or can it arise anywhere information is processed and responded to in a coherent way? With slime molds, the answer seems to lean toward the latter. They demonstrate that there are many evolutionary paths to achieving survival ingenuity. If the corpse flower uses its stench to deceive insects, if the resurrection plant plays dead to await rain, then the slime mold chooses another way, becoming a brain spread across the ground, boneless, nerveless, yet able to solve complex problems. It is a living testament to the diversity of evolutionary strategies, where intelligence does not necessarily have to belong to humans, animals, or anything familiar to us. And it is precisely at this point that slime molds are not just strange organisms for us to curiously observe, but also a humble mirror reminding us. The intelligence we pride ourselves on may just be one variant among countless ways life can learn and adapt. In the slime mold, we see a life form so simple it borders on the primitive, yet carrying within it survival strategies that modern science itself must bow to. In the damp darkness of tropical rainforests, where sunlight can only filter through a few layers of leaves, one of nature's most terrifying scenarios unfolds every day. This is not a scene from science fiction, but reality. There are creatures robbed of control over their very own bodies, turned into walking puppets serving another. And the puppeteer here is not a predator, but a tiny fungus. People call it cordyceps, the zombie fungus of ants. The tragedy begins with nothing more than a tiny spore, so light it can drift through the air or cling to a decaying leaf. When an unlucky worker ant passes by, the spore attaches to its hard exoskeleton. To our eyes, the ant continues its daily labor as usual, but just outside its cuticle, an invasion has begun. The fungus releases powerful enzymes, slowly drilling through the protective armor and opening a path inside. That is the moment the ant loses its freedom without ever realizing it. Once cordyceps has entered, it does not immediately kill its host. On the contrary, it behaves like a patient predator, silently drawing nutrients while keeping the ant alive enough to function. This is an incredibly sophisticated strategy. The ant itself is both transport vehicle and living house for the fungus to grow. In the days that follow, a network of fungal filaments gradually spreads throughout the body, replacing muscles, wrapping around organs, even the brain. Yet the most frightening part is not the physical damage, but the control the fungus begins to impose. At a certain point, the ant's behavior suddenly shifts in bizarre ways. It leaves the colony, abandons its familiar trail, and begins to climb upward. For a worker ant so tied to the ground, this is an act so abnormal it borders on absurd. But in truth, it is cordyceps pulling the strings. It directs the ant to seek an environment with the perfect humidity, temperature, and light for its growth. This is usually the underside of a leaf or a slender twig, just the right height above the forest floor. When it arrives, the manipulated victim performs the final act of its life. It bites down into the leaf vein with a deathly grip so strong that even in death, its jaws never let go. Biologists call this scene the death grip. This bite anchors the body in place, turning it into a scaffold for cordyceps to complete its cruel performance. After that, the ant dies. But the fungus's show has only just begun. From within, Cordyceps continues consuming what remains of the host, replacing its tissues with fungal fibers. Then, from the back of the ant's head, a long stalk erupts like a grotesque column. When mature, the tip of this stalk splits open, releasing millions of new spores into the air, spreading doom to the ants below. The cycle begins again, repeating like a play that has run for millions of years. What makes cordyceps so haunting is not just the way it kills its host, but the precision of its manipulation. If the ant dies too soon, the fungus cannot grow its fruiting body. If it dies in the wrong place, the spores cannot spread effectively. Thus, every stage, from the spore latching onto the skin to the ant's final bite into the leaf, must happen at exactly the right time and place. The smallest mistake would mean failure. And the chilling truth is, cordyceps almost never fails. Recent studies reveal that this fungus does not directly destroy the ant's brain. Instead, it forms a dense network around the nervous system, as if creating a remote control to govern behavior. Chemical signals secreted by the fungus disrupt instincts, compelling the ant to obey commands without knowing it. In other words, the creature is not merely devoured, it is hijacked, turned into a living tool of an alien intelligence. This adaptation is even richer than we imagine. There are dozens of different cordyceps species, each specialized to parasitize a specific host, from ants and beetles to even spiders. Each has fine-tuned its strategy to match the habits and physiology of its victim. This means that the so-called zombie fungus is actually an entire extended family of master manipulators, each writing its own parasitic script. Of course, in this play, ants are not entirely helpless. Some colonies have evolved defensive strategies. When they detect an infected member, they isolate it or even carry it far from the nest to reduce the risk of spread. This is a kind of evolutionary arms race. Every advance of the parasite forces the host to devise a countermeasure. And this tension has gone on for millions of years, silent but fierce. It is no wonder that cordyceps has inspired countless stories in popular culture, from novels and documentaries to video games. The image of an ant climbing to its death, then a fungal stalk sprouting from its skull, is as horrifying as it is mesmerizing, like a scene from a horror movie. But the truth is even more astonishing. This is not a product of imagination, but a genuine survival strategy refined over millions of years of evolution. When we look at cordyceps, the question is not only how can a fungus control an ant's behavior, but also where exactly do thought, freedom, and selfhood reside? If such a small creature can be forced to act entirely against its instincts, then perhaps the boundary between will and control in nature is thinner than we think. Cordyceps is not just a fungus, it is a mirror reflecting the ruthless yet profoundly creative power of evolution. Imagine you are walking through a pitch-dark forest after the rain, where the silence is so deep that every falling drop of water echoes. Then suddenly, among the rotting tree trunks and thick layers of forest leaves, you see gentle green glows spreading from moss-covered logs. That light is neither a reflection of the moon and stars, nor a trick of your eyes. It comes from living organisms right beneath your feet. This is bioluminescence, one of nature's most magical and surreal phenomena. Bioluminescence, simply put, is the ability of organisms to produce light through chemical reactions occurring within their bodies. Unlike a light bulb that needs electricity or fire that needs heat, these organisms can shine right in their habitats simply by combining a special molecule called luciferin with oxygen under the catalysis of the enzyme luciferase. The result is a molecular firework, releasing energy in the form of soft light without heat, completely calm yet utterly enchanting. What makes this phenomenon extraordinary is how widespread it is and the diversity of ways in which species use it. On land, there is the familiar flickering glow of fireflies on summer nights. Underwater, nearly every depth of the ocean is filled with bioluminescent life, from tiny bacteria, delicate plankton, to massive predatory fish. It is estimated that more than 75% of deep-sea organisms possess this ability. In a world of eternal darkness, light becomes a vital language of survival. On land, we are easily captivated by the love signals of fireflies. Each species has its own flashing rhythm, like a biological Morse code. The male hovers in the night, sending out the characteristic signals of his species. The female, if interested, responds with a matching flash. It is a dance of communication entirely through light, guiding the continuation of life. But nature always holds cunning surprises. In some species, females imitate the signals of others, luring unsuspecting males to approach, and instead of finding love, they become dinner. If on land, the glow of fireflies is tied to romance and deception, in the ocean, where darkness is eternal, bioluminescence serves far more complex purposes. One of the most striking examples is the anglerfish, a predator with a long rod protruding from its head, tipped with a tiny bioluminescent bulb containing glowing bacteria. In the pitch black depths of the ocean, this light acts like a beacon, attracting small creatures. But as soon as they approach, the anglerfish's enormous mouth, lined with sharp teeth, snaps shut. Here, light is a deadly lure, a hunting strategy refined through millions of years of evolution. Some marine creatures use light not for attack but for defense. Certain squid, when threatened, can eject a glowing cloud of ink, creating a dazzling display that confuses predators while they quietly escape. Others are more subtle. They glow from their bellies, mimicking the faint light filtering from above. This erases the shadow of their own bodies, making them nearly invisible when seen from below. In this case, light becomes a cloak of invisibility, shielding them from the sharpest eyes of hunters. Perhaps the most spectacular lights belong to the larvae of glowworms living in caves in New Zealand. Thousands of individuals hang from cave ceilings, releasing delicate glowing threads. In the thick darkness, the entire cave transforms into a fantastical starry sky, where the lights are not only breathtakingly beautiful, but also strategic. Insects fly toward these shimmering points, mistaking them for exits or companions, only to be trapped in sticky threads. Here, light is both visual art and a sophisticated natural trap. Looking at the bigger picture, bioluminescence is not just nature's magic trick. It is a profound survival strategy. For some, it is a romantic invitation. For others, it is a biological shield. For yet others, it becomes a deadly trap. This versatility has turned light into a universal language that nature employs in its harshest environments. Even more astonishing are the applications humans are learning from this phenomenon. Luciferase enzymes have become invaluable tools in medical research, allowing scientists to track cellular processes in darkness. Some biotech companies are even experimenting with the idea of living street lamps, genetically modified plants that glow, potentially replacing electric lights in cities. Though still far off, such visions remind us that nature is not only beautiful, but also holds technologies far beyond our imagination. And perhaps when we watch a firefly flicker across a field or see waves glowing beneath the ocean, we are not just witnessing a romantic sight. We are witnessing evolution's creativity, a testament that life can turn darkness itself into a tool, transforming the absence of light into an opportunity to shine even brighter. On a remote island in South America, there are creatures that at first glance seem like lifeless minerals, yet when a blade cuts into them, they ooze a bright red liquid like blood. This is not an illusion, but reality. The locals call them living rocks, beings that bewilder both science and human intuition. In nature, outward appearance usually helps us classify what is plant, what is animal, and what is inanimate. But here, every convention becomes fragile. A block of stone that breathes, filters seawater, and can even be eaten. This strange creature is, in fact, a type of tunicate, a distant relative of our own place in the evolutionary tree. In their youth, they swim freely as tiny creatures, carrying a primitive notochord like a rudimentary spine. But then, upon reaching adulthood, they give up the life of movement, choose to cling tightly to rock, and transform into a lumpy mass that appears lifeless. Instead of a backbone, they keep only a hard outer shell like stone and live a quiet life, drawing water in at one end, filtering out plankton, then expelling the water at the other. A simple cycle, yet one that conceals a paradox, outwardly mineral-like, inwardly bleeding red like a living being. Even more astonishing is that humans do not merely observe them from afar. In some coastal regions of Chile, living rocks are harvested as food. People split them open, eat them raw or cooked, savoring a flavor so intensely oceanic that it borders on extreme. Some describe the taste as eating the entire sea compressed into a single bite, while others grimace, claiming it is no different from tasting a mix of rust and sea salt. Yet however it is perceived, it remains part of local culinary culture, proof that humans always find ways to turn nature's strangest oddities into familiar experiences. If the living rock challenges our concept of what an animal is, another resident of the rainforest tests our notion of plants. That is the walking palm, a name that sounds like something out of mythology. From afar, they look no different from ordinary palms with tall crowns of leaves. But step closer and you will see they stand on clusters of long, stiff roots jutting above the ground, crisscrossing like stilts. It is this unusual root structure that gave rise to the legend that the tree can walk through the jungle. Of course, they do not stride like animals. Instead, the idea is this: when roots on one side grow longer toward the light or toward more stable soil, the opposite roots gradually wither. Over many years, the tree appears to have shifted from its original spot to a new position. Some scientists suggest this movement may only be a few centimeters per year, nearly invisible to the naked eye. But for a being we consider fixed to the ground, such slow relocation is enough to ignite human imagination. A forest where trees quietly shift over generations, like a slow dance of time itself. Although there is debate over whether the tree truly walks, no one denies that its peculiar roots are an incredible adaptation strategy. In rainforest environments, where soft soil collapses easily, standing on stilts helps the tree avoid toppling. If a large neighboring tree falls and leaves behind a sunny gap, this palm has the chance to lean and channel its growth in that direction. It does not move with muscles, but with the patience of roots. Placing the living rock and the walking tree side by side, we see two extremes of strangeness in life: an animal disguised as stone and a plant pretending to walk. Both exist quietly, so slowly that they are easy to overlook. Yet once you notice their presence, you cannot forget them. They are like biological riddles posed by nature. Where is the boundary between life and non-life, between stillness and motion? And it is precisely the existence of such creatures that reminds us nature does not operate within the rigid categories we humans create. For evolution, there is only one truly important question: how can one survive and reproduce? Whether by turning to stone or by inching along over decades, every strategy is valid. Life is not bound by the definitions we impose, but always finds its own pathways, often far beyond imagination. In that world, life's rhythm is not measured in moments, but in centuries. Movement does not need to be fast, only steady. Defense does not require weapons, but may simply be a stony shell or a stilted stance. These strange beings open a different perspective. To live is not merely to exist, but to invent ways of enduring with time. If you listen carefully, life around us is always whispering strange stories. They do not resound like thunder, but weave gently, like the breath of wind through leaves or drops of water falling onto stone. And when we begin to pay attention, we realize that there are countless marvelous forms of life hiding out there, waiting to be told in a slow, gentle voice. Let us begin with a creature that seems impossible to exist: the water bear, also known as the tardigrade. They are only as small as a speck of dust, yet they can survive in environments humans can only imagine in science fiction films. Sucked into outer space, soaked in boiling water, frozen to hundreds of degrees below zero, they still persist. The way such a tiny creature can withstand the harshest extremes makes us wonder: can fragility coexist with strength? And is true strength not in muscles or claws, but in flexibility before adversity? Going a bit further, deep in dense forests, we encounter a plant with a particularly intriguing ability: the resurrection plant. When droughts drag on, it curls up, withers, seeming dead. But with just a drop of rain, a few hours later, it opens, lush and green again, as if time had reversed. In a world where we often view life and death as absolute boundaries, the resurrection plant gently blurs that line. It teaches us a simple lesson. Sometimes, even in the driest moments, life is silently waiting to rise once more. And then, if we stoop down to the forest floor among decaying leaves, we will find slime mold, a creature without a brain, without a heart, nothing but a golden yellow mass of slime. Yet, it can solve mazes, find efficient paths to food, even mimic human transportation networks. That evokes a paradoxical feeling. Intelligence can exist even without a brain. Perhaps thinking does not belong only to humans, but is a natural operating principle, present in places we least expect. Following the water flow, in coral reefs, there is a creature that looks as if it stepped out of legend: The leafy sea dragon. With tiny fins resembling seaweed branches, it drifts in the water, camouflaged almost perfectly. When we gaze at it, it evokes a question. Where is the boundary between life and environment? Are they creatures or part of the water and seaweed where they dwell? Perhaps life is not just a separate self, but also merging, dissolving into its surroundings. Then we look up at the night sky where light twinkles not only from stars, but also from bioluminescent creatures in the deep sea. From the immortal jellyfish drifting quietly in the darkness to fish with fishing lamps on their heads, that light is not merely a beautiful phenomenon. It is a reminder that even in absolute darkness, life still finds a way to shine. In the silence of the deep sea, every gentle flicker is a song of resilience, of evolutionary imagination. Perhaps what fascinates us about these strange creatures is not only their unusual appearance, but also the messages they carry. Sea slugs absorb energy from the sun like plants. Sea cucumbers breathe through their anus and eject their entrails to defend themselves. Blobfish lose their shape when removed from ocean pressure. It sounds bizarre, even amusing, but each is a creative answer to a difficult question: how to survive. And it seems that right here, in what seems abnormal, we encounter the deepest essence of life. Because life is not bound by any fixed formula. It does not need to be beautiful, does not need to make sense by human standards. It only needs to work within the context where it was born. That is a simple yet powerful philosophy. To live is to adapt in whatever way possible. If you let your mind slow down, let these examples drift by like gentle images before sleep, you will see that biology is not just numbers, not just rigid laws in textbooks. It is a vast symphony in which every strange note, every unusual rhythm contributes to a rich melody. And within that melody, we too are a small part, neither nobler nor lesser, simply one among countless branches of life.